When you think of cruising, you probably imagine Caribbean beaches or glaciers in Alaska. My last cruise, though, was nothing like that. It could not have been more different. I spent 11 days cruising around Japan on an American cruise ship, and there were surprises every single day. Not just on the ship, but on land as well. On paper, this cruise was a dream come true, but I was nervous. There were so many things that could go wrong, and I was traveling 3,000 miles to board the ship. The ship I was sailing on was Norwegian's smallest and oldest, so I hoped that I would like her as much as the newer, bigger ships. I had no idea who else would be on this cruise. I wasn't sure what the food or the entertainment would be like, and I hoped that I wasn't setting myself up for failure because I had planned a very busy schedule. I didn't want to waste a minute. For years I've wanted to cruise on board the Norwegian Spirit. She was the first cruise ship that I ever sailed on, and I had so much fun on that cruise. When I saw that she was sailing in Japan, I knew that I had to get on board. It was my dream destination, and I hoped that I would be able to relive some of that excitement from my first cruise. I didn't know if that was possible, of course, because I was 11 on that first cruise, and everything is so exciting when you're that age. I definitely felt that feeling though when I first saw the ship in Tokyo and we walked through the terminal to board. It was so cool, and it was such a relief that the ship really was there. Embarkation was exactly how I expected a Japanese embarkation to be. It was very efficient, it was friendly, and it was very fast. I hoped that this good service would be a sign of things to come on the ship, but as with any cruise I take, there were plenty of conflicting reviews. Our boarding time was 11:30, which meant that we were on board for lunch, and there was no doubt in my mind where I wanted to go. Ever since that first cruise, I've been a massive fan of what is now called the Local. It's a bar and grill that's open 24/7, and I decided to start my cruise off in style by ordering a cheeseburger and fries. I know that's not very Japanese, but that is what I wanted. All the food in here is included in the cruise fare, and there were plenty of options like hot dogs, salads, sandwiches, and chicken wings. Looking around the restaurant, I was amazed by how modern it looked. This ship launched in 1998, which does make her pretty old by cruise ship standards, but this space did not feel it at all. I've been on ships that were 20 years younger that felt much older than this part of the ship did. Norwegian had spent a whopping $100 million on refurbishing this ship since I was last on board, so it did make sense that she was all shiny and new. I was looking forward to seeing if the rest of the ship felt like this too. 1998 might not feel that long ago, but a lot has changed since then. Back then, Google processed 10,000 questions a day, and now it does 3.5 billion a day. I remember this ship being so bright and colourful, and it had shells and fish everywhere. It might sound nice, and I do personally love it, but this style that they have now is much more what's in fashion. One of my favourite parts about cruising is when you get on board a new cruise ship and you get to run around and you get to explore everything. Our lunch had given us all the fuel that we needed, so we headed up to the top deck. This was so easy going up the stairs compared to being on some of the bigger ships, and the whole space just felt very bright and modern. I love these lights that they have here on the ceiling. Norwegian Spirit is just under half the size of the biggest cruise ship in Norwegian's fleet, Norwegian Encore, who I sailed on to Alaska earlier this year. Out on the top deck, we found people enjoying the sunshine, and there was a band playing by the pool. This would be a common occurrence and something that I always enjoyed. The pool deck had a lovely big pool in the middle, and there was always a lifeguard on duty. It was a bit chilly on this cruise, so I didn't really see many people swimming, but the lifeguard was always there, which is nice. There were hot tubs too, and a bar on this lower level and also the level above. Wandering upwards, we headed towards the back of the ship, and it was here that I noticed the first big change from when I was on board before. Back when I was 11, there was a water park here called Buccaneers Wet n Wild. I loved that, but I was so impressed by how this space looked now. It has been transformed into an adult-only area called Spice H2O, and the sun loungers, they just look so comfy. I'm a massive fan of a tiered aft like this, and it's nice of Norwegian to make this area more adult, as I've got more adult. I know they didn't do that just for me, of course, but it does suit me very nicely. By now it was time for what is called a muster drill. It is a safety drill that you have to do by law when boarding a cruise ship, and because we'd already watched the safety videos on our phones, we could just go to the muster station to check in. Mine was on the Promenade deck by the pub, and those are 3 words that I love to hear when someone is talking about a cruise ship. promenade deck, and pub. They don't normally go together, but I love it when they do. The deck wraps right the way around the ship and you can see out from every single side. I love doing laps on the promenade deck when I can, and this is a classic cruise ship feature. Lots of public spaces and restaurants look out onto this promenade, so I'd often be sat inside, I'd be having dinner, and I'd be watching people doing their laps. There is a track for running up on the top deck, and there's also a gym. Our cruise was taking us to a whopping 9 ports, and this was such a pinch me moment. It felt as though I had come full circle since my first cruise. I do sometimes wonder what 11-year-old me would think of me sat here now showing you this. Probably the first question would be, what is YouTube? Followed quite quickly by, who are you talking to? But I do think 11-year-old me would be very happy that I'm still cruising. I think hopefully she would like me. Heading inwards, we found this incredible atrium area. It's right in the middle of the ship and it does feel like the ship's heart. This is the main sort of focal area. She used to have a big staircase here with a water feature and a piano, and I have to admit, when I first saw the photos and saw that there was a massive TV screen here, I didn't really understand it. It seemed a shame to rip out those lovely staircases. As the cruise went on though, and I saw how this space was used, it started to make more and more sense. It still is a very, very impressive atrium. I mean, look at this ceiling, but I was just attached to those stairs. Not literally, of course. On the lower level, there is a cafe that serves Starbucks drinks, a reception, and an excursions desk. On the level above, there are shops and there's a bar called Magnum Champagne and Wine Bar. Up until now, the cruise felt all very familiar. Newer, for sure, but definitely familiar. They made an announcement that our cabin was ready, and this is when things got very unfamiliar very fast. The last time I was on board, I stayed in the cheapest inside cabin, and this time I had the best cabin on the entire ship. My cabin had a doorbell, if you can believe it, and a bath. I was so happy as soon as I set my eyes on this. I've always dreamed about having a bath on a cruise, but I never had dreamed of having one with such a view. Look at this. A little later in the cruise, I actually did a live stream on this YouTube channel from this bath, and it was great for that. Who knew? Off to the side, there were all the towels and the most amazing robes. This got me thinking about how many towels there must be on this ship and how much washing they must have to do. A weird thought, I know, but for once on this cruise, I would actually be able to find out because I booked a behind the scenes tour for later in the cruise. It was so much better than I ever expected. The Norwegian Spirit serves over 9,000 meals every single day, and thinking about that just blows my mind. Believe it or not, it was time for my next meal and we went to a restaurant called Silk. At the moment, this one is included in the cruise fare, but in future it is going to be an extra charge specialty restaurant. There are lots of specialty restaurants on board the Norwegian Spirit, and every person I spoke to on board said that they had a couple included as part of a booking promotion. I also had a couple more included because of my loyalty status with Norwegian, so that's always a nice bonus. I love free things. I do also get a free bag of laundry, and I always make sure that I use that. I appreciated it more than ever after seeing the laundry later in the cruise. Silk is an Asian fusion restaurant and the food in here was fantastic. It was 10 out of 10. I loved it. I couldn't have asked for anything better. The service was great, and while we were sat here, we could hear the teppanyaki restaurant. If you've ever been to teppanyaki, you'll know why I could hear it. It's more of a show than a meal, and I had booked it for later in the cruise. After dinner on cruises, my favourite thing to do is to go to the theatre, but I had heard that first there would be a show outside. As we sailed away from Tokyo, there were people playing music for us, they were waving, and it was just lovely. I always find the people in Japan to be so welcoming of tourists, and this made me so excited to be heading off on this cruise. I wish I could play for you the music, but YouTube sadly won't like that. It was a medley of all different kinds of songs, and I believe that they were from the local university. I do wonder how a conversation like that goes down. Is it something like, "Are you free on Wednesday?" "Yes." "Why?" "Well, would you like to go and play some music near a cruise ship?" "Sure." We did have lots of our own music inside the ship, of course, and the main venue for our evening's entertainment was the theatre. There are usually 2 shows in here every single evening, and on the first night we saw an acrobatic couple. It wasn't really my thing, but they were very good at acrobatics. We saw a violinist too, and another night a magician. I'm a big fan of the shows that have singing and dancing. I love costumes and set pieces, so I was hoping for more shows like that as the cruise went on. Believe it or not, but before Norwegian owned this cruise ship, she was owned by Star Cruises, and they used to have a real-life tiger that would be brought into the theatre. I'm glad they don't do that anymore. I don't think a cruise ship is a very nice place for a tiger, but as far as I can tell, all of the performers on Norwegian cruises are humans. They look like humans to me. The theatre itself I absolutely love. It feels like a real grand theatre. The seats were comfortable and they do have cup holders. I know that's a small thing, but it does make a difference because otherwise I just get a chilly hand from holding my drink for the entire show. We didn't have to arrive very early to get a seat, and the bar service was always good. On this cruise, I had booked 6 cruise line excursions, and most of them started fairly early, so we decided to head to bed after a quick drink. I, of course, was being called by my bath too. It was there in the back of my mind being like, Emma, come have a bath. Which I did, and it was phenomenal. It was life-changing, honestly. I'm not sure what I'll do when I have to go back to an inside cabin. Maybe I'll have to bring some sort of portable paddling pool. I am kidding, of course. Please do not do that. Do not bring paddling pools on cruises. Our first excursion was in the port of Shimizu, and this is where we went to see Mount Fuji. We were incredibly lucky not to have any clouds or any fog in the way at all. You might notice that there was no snow on top of Mount Fuji, and as we visited in November, that is pretty rare. Apparently it was the first time in 130 years that they've had no snow at this point. After seeing Mount Fuji, we went to the beach, and it was here that I bought my fortune. One of the pages just seemed to be compliments, which was very nice, but there were predictions for absolutely everything in my life. I'm not sure whose contract I'm signing, but you had better watch out because the fortune has told me what to do. In Nagoya and Osaka, we visited temples and castles. I tried my hand at one of these machines, but sadly I did not win this crying banana. I just felt like the crying banana. There are so many grand and incredible things to see and do, but if you're in Japan, you really don't have to do anything for it to be the best day of your life. Simple things like buying a drink, using a vending machine, or just going to a public toilet, they are all so fun. If you've never tried a Japanese toilet before, it is worth doing whatever you have to do to buy a flight to go to Japan just to go to the toilet. It is life-changing. After our busy days exploring on excursions, we would often come back to the ship to go for a buffet lunch. The buffet was open pretty much all of the time, and we always found something that suited whatever mood we were in. I thought the buffet was a pretty good size considering the smaller size of the ship, and we were always able to get a seat in here. We did often eat out the back though, just because the weather was lovely, and who wouldn't want to eat with this view? They had tea, coffee, hot chocolate, and juices available here all day, and I would usually make my own squash out of the cranberry juice or the other fruit juices. They had these machines in the buffet and also out by the pool, so we could always get a drink for free whenever we wanted to. Looking at the videos I took, it seems as though I was in the mood for poppadoms pretty much every single day, regardless of what else I was eating, and that does sound about right. I don't think you can beat mango chutney. It's so good. I wasn't planning on sunbathing on this cruise, but when the sun came out, it was really quite nice, and I spent a lot of time here at the pool at the back. It was a very popular place to be, but it never felt busy at all. Never ever. That is one of the benefits of taking a cruise where there are different nationalities on board. Everyone is nicely spread out across the ship. If it is a British only cruise ship, the pub tends to get very crowded. In my experience, Australians seem to like the casino, and I'll let you tell me where you think I find the Americans and the Canadians. In some places, we probably could have had 10 seats to ourselves if that's what we wanted. The beer garden, for example, it was a lovely bar that overlooked the pool deck. On one side was the smoking area and the other side was smoke-free. I sat up here one day when they had a barbecue on the deck, and it was just so much fun to watch everyone having a good time. The music was great, they brought on some local food for people to try, and it was just such a great atmosphere. Coke Zero wasn't always available at all of the bars, but it was consistently here up in the beer garden, so we would normally come up here at some point in the day if we wanted to pick up a can or two. I'm happy to say that the Japanese Coke that has some sort of laxatives in it, it's called Coke Plus, that was never found on this cruise ship, and that was a relief to me. I'm scared of that drink. This bar is another area that just looks really modern to me. I don't think, honestly, that the age of the actual ship matters, because when you're on a cruise, the things you interact with are the carpets, the chairs, the cushions, and the curtains. It isn't really the actual steel of the ship. There are, of course, some areas that are just completely timeless, and they haven't changed at all since I was on board when I was 11. One of those is the pub. I'm not sure what it is about the pub style, but it just is what it is. You can't improve on it. Even the most modern pub, it isn't modern in design. That would be really weird. I knew that I'd have to come back to the pub later when it was open one evening, but for now, I was just excited to have some time to explore the ship. We found the casino, which I think really has a wow factor with these high ceilings. This main part of the casino casino is no smoking, but they do have a separate smoking area. We also found the social club bar at the back. There are some very funny photos and quotes in here, and we'd find things happening here like crafts or karaoke or some of the kids' activities. I'm convinced that some people never found this area at all, but I do think it was worth finding, especially the quote that says, "Don't sweat petty things and don't pet sweaty things." So far, I was happy with all of the food that we'd had on board, but I was excited to see what these specialty restaurants could bring. The first on my list was an Italian restaurant called Onda, followed by a French restaurant called Le Bistro. I've been to both of these before on other cruise ships, so I knew that I had to pace myself. It would be very easy to fill up on the bread. You don't even need anything else, the bread is just so good, but I did want to eat the rest of the food. I often ended up skipping starters in places like Cagney's because I knew that I wanted to prioritize having room for dessert over having a starter. I didn't want to fill up on a lettuce and then not have room for my chocolate cake. That didn't make sense. I was once again defeated by the 7-layer chocolate cake, but it was definitely worth giving it a go. Norwegian are the most flexible freestyle cruise line, and there are no formal nights at all. Generally speaking, as long as you're dressed, you are good to go. That doesn't mean that you can't dress up though, and plenty of people do. I didn't look out of place at all when I wore my green dress, for example. Sometimes it is just nice to dress up. For the main dining rooms, there are no specific dining times. You just show up when you're hungry, and that is it. It is easy peasy. For the specialty restaurants, you book a time slot, and you can do that either on the app or you can do it by asking the crew. They are very popular, so make sure you book the slots as soon as possible, or you might end up eating at a less desirable time. I say that, but what is apparently the least desirable dining time is 5:30, and that's my personal favourite. That one's always left. The food in Le Bistro, Onda and Cagney's was fantastic, and the service was always great. I always left feeling very full, so I'd often walk around the top decks to try and get my food to go down. While I was up there, I would normally stop in at the Spinnaker Observation Lounge. This is probably my favourite bar on the ship. It has windows on all 3 sides and there are so many seats. There would be something happening in here every single evening, and it was nice to see everybody up dancing on the dance floor or taking part in the game shows. When they did game shows in here, they actually recorded them and they showed them on the cabin TV, which I always think is a nice touch. Audience participation is my worst nightmare, so being able to watch a game show from my cabin, that's a good distance for me. I am kidding, of course, and there were loads of seats where you could sit a little further out from the action, and also seats round the back too. The lounge felt very modern and we enjoyed lots of evenings in here. I loved the cushions too, and it felt as though I could very happily snuggle down in here, grab a drink and sort of catch up on things while enjoying the music. The observation lounge is right at the front of the ship, and in all the corridors the fish on the floor point forward, which I love. My cabin was right at the front too, so if ever I was in doubt, I would just follow the fish and I would end up there. It is so simple, but it does save a lot of time because otherwise I go the wrong way and I have to backtrack. When we docked in Osaka, we actually were docked overnight. We had 2 days in port. When a cruise ship docks overnight, you can come and go whenever you'd like to, so lots of people went out for their dinner or to experience Japanese nightlife. I was amazed looking up at this huge Ferris wheel. It was right next to the ship. The lights would change and it was just so pretty. Because it was warm outside, I could wander around in just a dress, and that was perfect. We had no excursion booked for the next day, so I decided I would give this wheel a go. Japan is very easy to get around by yourself, and we decided to walk to the local train station. It is very easy just to press the English button on the machines, press where you want to go, and put in your coins or notes to buy a ticket. All of the things that you need are in English, and I don't know if I can say that every single person in Japan is friendly and helpful, but every single person I've ever interacted with always has been. The trains are so on time, they're clean, and they even have different handles at different heights, which is genius. Why don't we have that on the London Tube? We went to do some shopping and I found the most amazing display of socks ever. Isn't this so cool? 7-Eleven in Japan is worth a trip by itself. There is one on every single corner and they are just so interesting. You could leave me in here for 6 hours and I still would not be bored. We don't have 7-Eleven in England, actually. I tend to think of it as an American thing, and now Japanese. Compared to England, everything felt so much cheaper. My train ticket was £2 each way. A can of Coke Zero from a vending machine machine was 60p, that's about 75 cents, and a ticket on the Ferris wheel was just £4. I'm convinced that if this was somewhere else, this would cost 20. There was no queue at all. We bought our tickets from a machine with an English button, and seeing the ship from up so high was so much fun. Everyone looked like little ants wandering around the pool deck. It was so unbelievably cute. When we sailed away in the early afternoon, we went to the main dining room for our 5 p.m. dinner. Some would call that a late lunch, but for me that is the perfect dinner time. At the back of the ship there are these amazing huge windows. It is the most grand main dining room, and one of the main things I remember about cruising on here when I was a child. I actually tried to recreate this clip of me at the dinner table. Let me know how you think I did. I think I did okay, but I hope no one was watching on CCTV. I think I would look rather silly indeed. Waving your arms around in a closed restaurant is definitely not the done thing. Not the done thing is your Britishism of the week. It just means that something is not the standard, it is not proper. Some people would say that me dipping my pizza in ketchup is not the done thing, but I would disagree. We were in and out of the main dining room within an hour and a half, which is pretty good. It definitely helps to eat early because we never had to wait for a table anywhere. It looked as though there were a lot of tables though, so I can't imagine people waiting too long, but there are over 2,000 guests on this ship, so it is needed. I could have quite happily eaten in here every single day of the cruise, but there were just so many places that I needed to eat and things I needed to try. There is another main dining room on board too, and I would see that when we went for our behind the scenes tour a little later. We also got to see in the kitchens, the freezer, and my favourite laundry machine. Yes, I do have one of those now. Deal or No Deal is a classic on Norwegian cruises, and I think I've seen it on every cruise I've been on with them. It was held in the atrium, and this is when the big TV screen started to make sense to me. At first I felt like Norwegian had just replaced my stairs with a TV, but by moving the stairs to the other side it completely changed how this space was used. Before it was just a very nice place where you would stop for photos, you might wander around, but that was really it. Now it was a place where people would come and people would sit. They would do trivia in here, they would have live music on the level above, and the screen would show information about where we were and what was happening in the port. It's hard to imagine it any other way now that I've seen it like this, and I do agree that this was a good decision, despite my earlier reservations about the stairs. People often say to me, Emma, if you eat dinner at 5, are you not hungry again? Well, sometimes, yes I am, but that is no problem on a cruise, and not a cruise like this, because there is food 24/7 on this ship, literally. We popped to the buffet, and here I found this amazing bright green cake. I'm not sure what the green was about. It was very, very green. It didn't really taste green, but it was pretty addictive. I had this cake lots of times on this cruise, and whenever it would appear, I would get some. There were also lots of meringues that were very nice. At this point though, I hadn't found any cookies on board, and I was hoping that I would, because Norwegian's cookies are particularly nice. That's what started my cookie addiction on that first cruise. After sailing away from Osaka, we visited the islands of Naha and Nars. We didn't have any cruise line excursions booked here, and it was really nice just to slow down for a while. The excursions so far had been great fun, but doing our own thing meant that we could be on our own schedule. For me, that meant waking up late and going to the local for brunch. The pancakes were my favourite food. I'm not really a fan of breakfast foods, but if we can push them to brunch, that's an idea that I can get behind. They had these comment cards on every table, which I love. The fact that a cruise line actually wants feedback, I always think that that's a good thing. It was here that I found a vending machine just for hot sauce and ice cream, and I found a shrine where my Google Translate, it felt like it insulted me. Google Translate was my favourite tool for this trip, and you can just point your camera at something, it will detect the language and it will translate it instantly. Occasionally it does do a few weird things, but it was very helpful. Another helpful thing I did pre-cruise was that I bought an eSIM. I've never had a phone before that would accept an eSIM, but now I do. It saved me a lot of money on my phone's normal roaming charges. I did have a Wi-Fi package on the ship, which I used to stream my live stream, but when I was out and about, having the data was very useful. Not having any excursion meant that I had spare time to catch up on things like filming my cabin tour. This cabin deserves a full video, of course it does. It's going to be very different from the inside cabin tour that I made last time, but please make sure that you have given my website your email address so that I can let you know when that next video is live. Just go to emmacruises.com/news and put in your email address. One of my favourite things about cruising is waving, and I know that sounds weird, but I just love how by getting a certain distance away from somebody, it's now okay to wave at them. I find that so strange, but it's so good. There was lots of waving on this cruise, and even when we were on the excursions, the school kids would wave at us and they would say hello. I love how the kids have matching matching hats for their school classes. I just think that is adorable. One of the most popular specialty restaurants on board is called teppanyaki, and it's a great one if you're with a group of friends. It is very loud with people singing and things clattering around, but basically you watch your chef cook your food for you while telling you jokes and singing. It is very funny and it's different from any other dining experience. At this point in the cruise, I felt as though I was waiting for something to appear in the theatre. So far we'd only had 1 or 2 people at a time doing the shows, and we hadn't seen the production cast. I figured that there must be one. Entertainment, of course, is very subjective, but I was very happy to see that on the schedule there was something that seemed right up my street. Blazing Boots was a country show, and this kind of show was much more what I was expecting. I was wondering why they had kept these amazing singers and these dancers hidden for so long, but when I took the behind the scenes tour later, I did find out why. After the show, crew from all different kinds of departments took to the stage, and I love that Norwegian do this. This is one of my favourite Norwegian memories. It is of course just a few people from every team, but it is so lovely to recognise them and to be able to see them all there. The next night we had a musical singing show which I loved. They even sung a song from Book of Mormon, which did surprise me. I love the Book of Mormon musical, but if you have seen it, you'll know that it's not exactly cruise ship appropriate. In our ports of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we went to the peace parks that were created after the atomic bombs dropped in 1945. In Nagasaki, we also visited a museum to learn more about it, and although these definitely weren't happy excursions like the rest, they were very interesting and I think a must-do for these ports. We were given quite a bit of free time on both excursions, so for me the excursion felt more like transport and a little bit of commentary rather than the kind of classic walking tour. I don't feel as though we really needed to do the excursions in these 2 ports. We probably could have visited the museum and the park alone, but one benefit of doing cruise line excursions is that they are so unbelievably easy. You just walk off the ship and you get onto the bus. You don't have to think beyond that. We also didn't have to worry about getting back to the ship on time because the cruise lines are always in contact with and they wait for their own excursions. In total, over 200,000 people died when the 2 bombs dropped, and our tour guides told us about the stories of the people who lived here, including the inmates and the staff at Nagasaki prison who were killed instantly by the blast. These are some of the walls. I normally try and leave my sentences and my paragraphs together when I write YouTube scripts, but I have no idea how I'm going to go from atomic bombs to kids clubs, so you're just going to have to forgive me. I am changing the subject now, here it goes. There did used to be kids clubs on board the Norwegian Spirit, but as part of the refit, Norwegian replaced these. The kids club is now extra cabins, and the teen club is a lounge for playing games or reading a book. It is a lovely space up high, a really nice lounge, and given that I only saw 5 or 10 children on this cruise, I do think that makes sense. There were still lots of activities for kids though, and the daily schedule was pretty busy. It would be delivered every single night to our room, and I would sit there having a look at what I was going to do tomorrow. It would say things like if there was a theme for the night. The most popular theme night on Norwegian cruises is called the Galley party. It used to be called the White Night, and I have a white dress that I always bring just for this on Norwegian cruises. I decided to change into my dress after dinner because there is no way that I could eat dinner in a white dress without getting all my food down the front. It is like a magnet to food. The White Night party was held in the Spinnaker Observation Lounge, and the dancers from the theatre were here to kick things off. I think I need to say that because I don't want you to look at this and think, wow, I have to be a great dancer to go on board the Norwegian Spirit. It was not that at all. These are the proper dancers. They had free face painting in here too, so I did get a few colourful dots. I've got to be honest, I thought that these would glow. They didn't, but it was still good fun. Our cruise had been pretty busy so far, so I was happy when I saw a sea day on the schedule. I knew that I would be starting the day with a behind the scenes tour, but apart from that, I thought I would do a bit of shopping and maybe take a midday bath. For me, that is the ultimate treat. I can't think of anything better. The behind the scenes tour cost $99 and it was worth every single penny or cent, I suppose. I do get a shorter behind the scenes tour included as a perk of my platinum loyalty status, but this one took us places that I've never been to before, like the engine control room. Our tour started by meeting in the second main dining room called Taste. We did eat in here too during our cruise, and we had a lovely seat by the window. It was here that we learnt a little bit about what we would see and the rules. It was just things like don't touch anything, don't try and climb into a pile of warm towels, don't try and steer the ship, common sense kind of things. When we first went into the theatre, we got to see into the wings. We saw the dressing room, and we learned that the ship was waiting for a guitarist, and that's why we hadn't seen the band and the production cast on the stage for the first few days. There wasn't any mention of that tiger that used to be on board, but it was very cool to be on the stage. The last time I was on a cruise ship stage, I shaved my head, so that was very strange. I have no desire to be on a stage of any kind, but I'm so glad that other people do. I love watching. In the galley, we found out how the food is prepared and stored. On the wall, there were photos of each dish as it should look, and they showed us the special area where they make food for people with allergies. I thought that was a nice touch. In each place that we went to, we were told more about it by the person who was in charge, and they were always happy to answer our questions. We even got to go in a big freezer in the provision storage, which I loved. It's crazy to think about how many bananas or how many potatoes are needed for 2,000 guests plus crew. For all that food, you need some really big pots and you need a massive whisk. I hope that you like mine here. My tour came with a complimentary photo. We went next to my favourite place on board, the laundry. I don't know why, but it just blows my mind to see how many towels and sheets there are on a cruise ship like this. My favourite machine is this huge one that dries, folds and warms the sheets. It is the people who work in areas like this who keep a cruise going, and I'm very, very grateful to them. They work incredibly hard. On next, we went to the engine control room and the bridge. No filming in here was allowed, but it was so interesting. All in all, the tour took about 2 hours, and it is one of the best things that I've done on a cruise. After the tour, we went to trivia in the pub, which was good fun, and I even had a go in the casino. Norwegian did win this time, but I'm sure I'll win one day. Norwegian do add a small fee to add money to your casino account, which I thought was a bit strange. It was only 30 cents, so not the end of the world, but I just took that out of the money that I was going to gamble. The itinerary was definitely focused on Japan, but we did actually visit South Korea on this cruise. I love it when a place has a theme, and the theme of Jeju Island is definitely tangerines. I bought this whale because he has a tangerine on his head. I bought these socks that have a bear on them because the bear has a tangerine on his head. I just love it. We visited the Natural History Museum, and we found a shark that looks like me when someone tries to tell me that cruises are boring. We saw a rock that is meant to look like a dragon. Let me know if you think it does. And we went shopping to a place where you could buy, believe it or not, tangerines. Norwegian did bring on board some of the local tangerines for people to try at the barbecue, which I thought was a nice touch. The majority of the food on this cruise was the same as you'd find on any Norwegian cruise anywhere in the world. There were so many different nationalities on board, I think that makes sense. All nationalities like cookies though, and I'm happy to say that I did find them in the buffet at afternoon snack time. They were fantastic, as they always are. They're slightly soft and gooey. I love that. It's hard to know for sure, but I would guess that the majority of guests on this cruise were from countries like the USA, Canada, Australia and the UK. I also heard quite a few people speaking German, French and Spanish. It was a real mix. English was the main and only language on board, although I did hear lots of other languages being spoken. That made it very easy for things like entertainment. I've shown you a little preview of the public areas in this video, but to know if the $100 million that Norwegian spent was worth it, you're gonna have to watch this video next. This is not just the before and after of the ship, this is also the before and after of me. So I'll see you there in a minute.